One of the biggest things that I've learned is that it doesn't matter how much time you get, but rather what you do with the time you're given. And obviously not everyone's illness is life-shortening or, terminal or however you want to phrase it, but it still is something that really impacts the illness community as a whole. And most of us are put into situations where it is at least life-threatening. And realizing that even if you have that prognosis, even if you're terrified, you can still do so much right now that will make such lasting positive impact, and that your life is not over.
You are listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. I'm Kyle Bryant.
And I'm Sean Baumsark. Together, we're navigating life with disability. All right, thank you for listening today. This is the Two Disabled Dudes podcast, and you are listening to episode 45. We have another fantastic individual to introduce to you today. But before we share that conversation, Kyle, are you there?
I am here, and I have a little story to share. This winter, I installed a new thermostat, so I'm using the Nest system, right? So now I can say, hey, Alexa, set my thermostat to 71 degrees or whatever.
The science of laziness. I love it. Keep going. This is a wonderful story.
So it starts getting warm around here, right? And I hadn't turned my air conditioning on at all. So I'd open my windows at night and close them in the morning, and my apartment stayed cool until last night. It was like 94 degrees outside yesterday. And so last night I was like, all right, I need to turn my air conditioning on. For the first time with this thermostat, I turned my air conditioning on, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table working on my computer, and I'm like, man, it's like hot. It's really hot in here. So I friggin' feel the vent, and there's hot air coming out. My air conditioner. I turned my air on, and heat's coming out. So I obviously need to change some of the wires or something. I did something, and you know what? I'm pissed at my neighbor Paul because he's the one who helped me. I'm totally blaming this on Paul.
Dang it, Paul.
So,
oh, man.
But anyway, so I'm like just sweating last night, just going, oh, you idiot. What are you doing?
So were you able to get the AC on?
No,
doing
luckily,
it yourself? Or no? Like, it wasn't that your technology just turned on the wrong thing. It's that you literally got some wires crossed and you can't get the AC
yeah,
on.
I think we connected the. I don't know. I didn't feel like looking into it, and I was like, all right, it's 78 degrees inside, and Alexa told me that it was going to be 71 outside, like overnight. So I'm like, all right, I'll just open my windows, turn a fan on, and it'll get cooler. And it got down to 75 by the morning, so I was okay. But I need to figure this out because it's only going to get warmer.
Yeah, I hope that you get that figured out pretty quick.
Yeah. So lots of really exciting things going on in my world.
Glad to hear it. I like it. Hey, a couple of episodes ago, you talked about, we talked about clinical trials. And you had mentioned that one of the highlights of what trial you've been involved in are the car rides. You get a little bit of car service, drive you about an hour. How have those car rides been?
Good, man. The last one I went on to my clinical trial, I went like a half an hour earlier than I had been. So the car picked me up at 7:15, and I answered some emails for a little bit and on the drive-in, and then I fell asleep and How awesome is that? If you can fall asleep on your commute, like, oh my gosh, I just felt like $1 million because I was sleeping on my way to on my commute to the clinical trial.
That's awesome. So, we've talked about it before, but I think that's one thing I love about taking the train sometimes is the ability to check out, sleep, read, work, do something other than worry about traffic.
Exactly. Yeah, love it. So it's going good. You've got my final appointment on Thursday. I'm not exactly sure. I forget when the whole trial is supposed to be complete. But I think recruitment has gone pretty darn well, and everyone's playing their part and getting it done. So it's a really exciting thing to be involved in.
Sweet.
So today, Sean, we have an interview with Shira Strongin. And as you know, and I know, Shira is a fierce advocate for rare disease and women's rights. Through middle school and high school, Shira began her journey in the rare disease world due to several complications and conditions in her own life. Today, as a college student in Washington, D.C., Shira takes a very active role and approach to advocacy and the organization she started. The organization is called The Sick Chicks, and it works to facilitate an international sisterhood, which is what you'll hear all about. So, without further ado, here is our conversation with Shira Strongin.
All right. Well, I'm super excited to bring Shira on the show today. Shira, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm super excited.
I am too, because I've been reading a lot about your story, and it's pretty awesome. So you've got a lot of stuff out there, and we're excited to hear about it today.
I was fortunate to meet Shira a few months ago in Washington, D.C. during a Rare Disease Week. And before we get into the details of Shira's journey and what she's doing, I wanted to talk about Shira's family and a little bit of their history. While hanging out in D.C., I had the pleasure of also meeting Shira's father. And in a conversation one afternoon, he talked about the family business. And he shared something that I think most of our listeners are probably going to be familiar with. Shira, what's the connection to the popular family game Connect 4?
So my grandfather, my dad's dad, was actually the creator of Connect 4, and he did a lot of other toys too. You might have heard of Weebles Wobbles and They Don't Fall Down, and then the Power Lords also. So I like to say I'm never going to be as accomplished as my grandfather, but it's okay because I'm making my own way. But it's always a cool party trick to pull out and be able to say, hey, guess what? I suck at Connect 4, but I'm technically a legacy here.
That's really
awesome.
Cool. I feel
love
like
that.
Connect 4 is just one of those games everybody grew up with, no matter when you were born.
Right.
It's amazing, to hear about that because so many games have such a short shelf life, but everyone I talk to, no matter their age, knows what Connect 4 is and has played it.
Yeah. How are you bad at Connect 4? Like,
don't understand it, but every time I get beat, every single time.
I see. Yeah, well, maybe we'll have a three-way Connect 4 tournament if we ever meet. So,
Rare Disease Week 2019, we're gonna do it.
I feel like Connect 4 is a two-player game. I don't know how we're gonna do more. But we could have
like a little bracket and like
a tournament or something.
Yeah.
All right. I'm super excited because after I heard this from your dad, I made him take a selfie with me. So I intend on posting that at some point.
Selfies, he doesn't take pictures, so that speaks volumes to you. I'm really impressed.
Oh, that's funny. Well, very cool. Thanks for telling us about that. What I'm super excited about today is really It's a sort of a niche market I think we're touching on here in a weird kind of businessy way. Our podcast is all about pursuing the best of life beyond any circumstance, and especially when it comes to disease or disability. And what I love about Shira and the work she's doing is her commitment and her effort on behalf of women and girls. So, guys, don't tune out. This is a special recording today that I think people in your world, whether it's a girlfriend or a wife or a daughter or a niece or just somebody you know, I think most of us are going to benefit from the conversation today. So, Shira, tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words. What has your journey been like?
So I got sick when I was pretty young. I always had kind of symptoms at a young age, even when I was a baby, like little weird things, circulation issues, not having normal temperatures, etc. But right before my 10th birthday, I had a back injury that kind of served as a trigger event, and my health just spiraled from there. And to this day, we still don't fully know what's causing everything. I've been diagnosed with certain things, and then other doctors have said, no, I don't have that, and now I'm just kind of in this undiagnosed limbo. But throughout that whole journey, one of the biggest things I realized was the amount of sexism in medicine. How many times I would go to the ER with my heart rate at 180 because one of my comorbidity conditions is called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So when I go from sitting to standing, my heart rate skyrockets and my blood pressure tanks. But every time I would go to a doctor about it, they would just tell me that I'm a type A girl, that I'm very anxious, that it's just hormones. And first of all, that's really minimizing to people who do suffer from true anxiety, because anxiety isn't a just kind of thing. But it also prevents answers from being found. You know, I could have been on treatment for my POTS years before I started treatment if doctors had just done a simple tilt table test and checked my blood pressure and heart rate instead of assuming that I was just type A and anxious. And that's really when I started Sick Chicks. I originally started it under a pen name, so I wrote under the pen name Sick Chick starting when I was about 11 or 12, and the blog picked up. And I quite honestly don't know how it did so fast, but I think it's because it was before social media got really big. So before the whole chronic illness community found, Instagram and Facebook, they really went to blogs. And so, blog spots at Google and stuff like that. And my blog got picked up by an East Coast-based nonprofit, and I started being asked to speak at these national conferences. And unfortunately, I would love to say that my first response was like, this is amazing and how exciting. But it was more along the lines of like, oh crap, I now can't be anonymous anymore, because I kind of banked on that anonymity. It forced me out into the limelight, so to say, but it was the best thing that did happen to me, because I got to meet all of these incredible women who shared stories similar to mine of misdiagnoses because of sexism in medicine. Their insecurities and body image issues, because most young women can kind of see themselves in people portrayed in media. You can look at a TV show and say, oh, I totally relate to that character. But when you're sick, there's not really anybody like that. And through these experiences and meeting all these other young women, I decided to take my little blog and turn it into Sick Chicks, which is now a pending 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to uniting and empowering women with varying illnesses and disabilities.
That's
wow.
Awesome.
So what, you may have covered it, but originally you started writing just for the sake of expression. Is that right? You were just kind of needed some way to just let your feelings out and to talk through the stuff you're walking through?
Yes, I wanted a way to process what I was going through. I'm an only child. I don't have any siblings to talk to about it. My parents are awesome, but it's a little bit difficult to talk to your parents all the time about everything. And I didn't have any friends who were sick at that point. So I didn't have anyone I could kind of connect with and talk about these things openly with. So I started the blog, and amazingly, other people were in similar situations and found comfort in it.
And I think just for the sake of our listeners, we'll get into this in a little bit, but now this blog sort of pending 501c3 Sick Chicks is this international community for the sake of girls and women. So I'm incredibly excited to continue talking about that.
Yeah, I wanted to I was thinking, this is a concept Sean, that we've talked about before and that I think about all the time is that the most powerful thing that you can do as a rare disease patient, or a patient who feels like you can't relate to anyone because they don't know what you're going through, connecting with other people with the same or similar conditions is so incredibly powerful. It's really what drives me, and Shira, I can tell that it's what drives you, and it's just so powerful, and it's awesome that you found this way to drive that connection.
Thank you. I absolutely agree. I think one of the most important things is not feeling alone and isolated, and with any illness or any disability, it can feel very isolating, but especially with rare diseases. I mean, for me, I have some gene mutations that make me quite literally a 1 in a million, and so that's just an experience where, I never imagine being able to meet anyone or talk to anyone who would get it. And even if I don't meet somebody with my same illness, if I talk to these other young women who have differing illnesses and disabilities, we can also connect under these common threads. I think there's this big misconception that when you get sick, life stops, and that is so not accurate. You just have to change your way of living, and it's really amazing to connect with other people who get that and understand what it's like to have to figure out how to go to school in a wheelchair, have to figure out how to time medications, have to figure out different ways of applying to colleges, or have to look at, disability student services instead of just, do I really love this college, but are they going to be an accessible place for me? And no matter what illness or disability somebody has, rare disease, common illnesses, mental illnesses, it's this really uniting thread, and it's amazing to be able to share those experiences with people and be able to talk about those things.
Absolutely, that's great.
I love that perspective. I think it's so important in any circumstance, especially disease or disability. Life isn't over. There's always a reason to keep moving forward. You just have to maybe find it and redefine what your reason is and realize that life is just different. It's not over. It's not lost. It's not wasted. It's just going to be a little bit different, and I love what you've done to help bring that to light. Tell us a little bit more about what Sick Chicks is.
So in my experience, patients are oftentimes taught to cope, and I don't think there's anything wrong in coping, but there is a certain amount of complacency in just figuring, I have this illness, I'm just going to have to live with it, and I don't have to go do anything, and that's the opposite of what I wanted to do with Sick Chicks. I want these young women to feel empowered to share their stories, use this experience to create lasting positive impact on the world, and that's what we try to do. So we have a spotlight program that allows girls to get published so they can share their stories about pretty much everything. We've had girls write about religious experiences. We've had girls write about specific awareness weeks, body positivity, pretty much anything goes on that front. We just want to provide this platform to have their voices be heard. We also do in-person meetups and events that are all accessible for every illness, every disability. We always make sure to have a quiet room for our women who have different sensory issues. We make sure it's a completely allergy-free environment. And it's really cool to see these young women who don't have a necessarily quote-unquote normal social life be able to have these normal nights of karaoke or movie nights or pizza or going to the beach, things like that. And I remember one time after one event, I think it was actually Sick Chick's second birthday party that we did, this mom came up to me crying, and I started freaking out because when you see a mom of a Sick Chick crying, you're worried of what happened to their kid because these are really fragile kids. And she was crying because this was the first time in months she had seen her daughter smile, let alone laugh. And that's what we really want to do at Sick Chicks, is provide those opportunities and provide the ability for girls to realize that they don't have to sit at home and wallow all the time. So one of the things we're actually working on now, we've shifted our focus a little bit more to narrow in on women's issues and women's rights. And we have a summit coming up about sisterhood and sexuality. And sexuality is so much more than just, sexual orientation. It's about reproductive care and physical intimacy and emotional intimacy and body positivity and autonomy over oneself. And all of these ideas that, our young women kind of missed out on that traditional education with, or they're told, you can't have a normal, healthy relationship, or, you will never be able to have kids, but there's so many different ways to do things. So we want to really be a source of education and empowerment for that.
That's powerful. I love it.
Yeah, when you were telling that brief story about the mother who was crying, I got chills and teared up a little bit because I feel like I know an aspect of that situation, and I just love that you're enabling that to happen. One thing I was thinking when you were telling this is how much time did it take from you? Were you just like on this 24/7 for years to get it going?
Pretty much. That Sick Chicks has been my life for the past few years, and I actually kind of love it because it's what I love to do. It's what gives me purpose. So it's great. But I had been a one-woman show until very recently when getting this summit together, I brought two other amazing women onto our team. One is our event coordinator and one is our social media manager. And that's definitely taken a little bit of that piece and that weight off of me and me alone. Because before, I'm a college student also, and my life was Sick Chicks and college, but Sick Chicks had always been my priority, probably not to my parents, happiness about that one. But Sick Chicks is what I want to do for the rest of my life, and it takes a lot of time, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Love it.
So you talked about shifting your focus a little bit to some of the social and political issues that women are up against. Tell us a little bit about what has inspired your approach toward activism, because, following you on social media and meeting you in Washington, D.C., knowing that's where you go to school, it's obvious. If anybody spends about 12 seconds on your Instagram, it's obvious that you're very, very active in advocacy for women's rights and women's issues. So what has inspired your approach there, and what are some of the accomplishments maybe that you've experienced?
So going back to my childhood, my mom actually never let me watch Disney princess movies because of their anti-feminist, homophobic, ableist, yada, yada, yada messages, which at the time I went over my head and I was just like, I don't get this. Why can't I watch The Little Mermaid? But now I totally understand why, because it's made me into the feminist and advocate I am today, not having to compare myself to those ideals, never being taught that I needed a prince to come around and save me, that I had to go and save myself. So I'm really, really grateful for that, even though it was a little bit weird at the time. And again, going back to that idea of, coping being what we're taught as patients, but that kind of being complacent, I wanted to take an active role in fighting for my future. And the best way for me to do that was through legislative advocacy and being able to work on pieces of legislation like 21st Century Cures. I was so lucky to be able to work with the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, doing some social media for that, and writing different op-eds about it and going to the Hill and speaking about it. So it was really a way to take back the control that this illness has taken from me and fight for this tangible future that can only really be gotten through increased funding to research and access to quality, affordable health care. Because of my own fight with that, I got so many young women from Sick Chicks wanting to get more involved in the legislative advocacy side of things, but they didn't really know how to because it's not something that we're really taught. You don't learn, even in government classes in school, you kind of learn how government works, but you don't fully understand the process of getting a bill passed and what it takes to be an advocate and all of that. So I shifted my focus for that a little bit on Sick Chicks and to provide education about that and empower women to know that they can go and have their voices be heard. From the women's rights standpoint, I myself have a very complicated medical history. I like to say that my body is an oxymoron, emphasis on the moron, because I have a platelet disorder that makes me bleed, yet I get blood clots all the time because of a vascular disease and have to be on blood thinners. So I had periods from hell. I was in ICU receiving transfusions because of how much blood I was losing. I would lose about 2 to 3 units of blood in about maybe day and a half, 2 days, which is just not safe or healthy. But I couldn't take any of the normal options. I couldn't take birth control because hormones impact clotting risk. I couldn't take meds to slow down the bleeding because that was impact clotting risk. So I was left being transfusion dependent. So I was dependent on red cells and platelets to get me through this. And that seemed so ridiculous to me. And I started to look into permanent options like an endometrial ablation or a hysterectomy, which wouldn't allow me to have children. And in my mind, I thought this was a no-brainer. I figured, I would go to the doctor about this. They would fully support it. They'd be like, yeah, you shouldn't be almost dying once a month from your period. That's stupid. Let's do this. Also, you have weird genetic illnesses that if you want to have kids, you can still have kids through, IVF or surrogacy, etc. But also, you probably shouldn't carry kids in the body that you're in. That wouldn't be safe. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. I had doctors telling me things like, but that'll make it harder to find a husband if you can't have kids. You never know what'll happen in 10 years. I even had one doctor ask me, well, have you tried pads? I was like, that doesn't stop the bleeding. Wow. You're ridiculous. Anyway, so through my fight for that, I kind of realized how important this idea of choice and autonomy over yourself is in making these decisions that are the best for your body and allowing women, whether they're healthy or whether they're sick chicks, to know that they have the ability to make these decisions and that it doesn't make them less of a woman or a bad person or any more, quote-unquote, unlovable because of this. And that's really helped shift the focus towards this Sisterhood and Sexuality Summit and my work more in women's rights, because I want that to be a conversation that's had, because it's just not had enough.
So you've mentioned the Sick Chick Summit a couple times. So tell us a little bit more about that, and how do our listeners get involved or check it out? What's in store for this summit?
It's going to be great. So right now it's set up where we want women, or really anybody who identifies more femme-leaning, to come, and it's 13 and up, because we do want that age limit so that we can have conversations about reproductive care, healthy relationships, etc., in a healthy manner and a safe manner where everyone's comfortable with it. We will be having two main panels. One is on reproductive care, and we'll be featuring panelists including gynecologists, genetic counselors, pelvic therapists, etc., to talk about the issues that come along with reproductive care in a chronically ill community and what pregnancy can look like, what options are for testing, etc. And then we're going to be having a panel on healthy relationships for unhealthy people. We want relationships, and we need to know how to have them in healthy, safe ways, because the statistic is 1 in 5 women get sexually assaulted at some point throughout their lifetime, but the statistic with disabled women is 1 in 3. And that's just not a number that's okay in any way, shape, or form. So we really want to open up that conversation. And we're going to have a lot of different self-care activities and body positivity activities. We've partnered up with an organization called I Support the Girls that brings menstrual hygiene products to women who wouldn't have access to them otherwise. So we're going to be doing a big drive for them there. And we might have a special celebrity moderator. That is a very big possibility. So stay tuned for that. The summit will be in Orange County, California. It'll be at Saddleback Community College in Mission Viejo. Tickets right now are on pre-sale for the next few days for $5, and then they'll go up to $10 and then $50 at the door. One of our big things is making sure that the summit is accessible for everyone, and it doesn't just mean physically, that also means financially. So when we say it's $5 ticket, it truly is a $5 ticket. It is not, $8 with service fees and taxes. Six just has absorbed all of that. Because it really is important to be able to have people have access to this event that want to be there. For people who aren't in California or locally able to come, we will be live streaming panels. We will not be live streaming the discussion sections after the panels, because we want those to have the kind of safe space and know that what's said here stays here, etc. But we will be live streaming the panels, and we will archive them to put on our website for afterwards.
That's exciting. I love it.
Beautiful.
It should be a lot of fun.
Sounds like a packed agenda.
It is. It's going to be great, though.
Is this something you sort of see being annual, or something of that? Maybe not that particular topic, I guess, but summits themselves.
We have Sick Chick Summits annually, and the topic would change kind of consistently. That way it's not the same people, the same speakers, the same thing every year. One of our goals is to eventually have an overnight conference where we would call it the sickest sleepover you'll ever attend. So it'll be more focused on the fun aspects and the living life aspects rather than some of the educational aspects, versus this one is primarily education focused.
Sure, you've told us about what you do for your community of sick chicks. What's in store for you personally? Because it's got to be so, I mean, in a way it's energizing, right? But it's got to be draining in a way too. I feel like driven people always have to have something personal for themselves. What do you have for you?
Definitely. Self-care is super important when doing this kind of work, and I definitely need to take time for myself. I have music and dancing. That's kind of what does it for me. I play a couple of different instruments, and it's really nice to take time to just sit by the piano and shut the door and not have to be on my phone or on social media or on high alert. And I also really enjoy swing dancing, which sounds super random, but I swear it's so much fun. The music is great. Everybody is so nice, so I try to go to that weekly.
We have a pretty strong listener base, and let's say you were standing in front of a conference center, or you were sitting down one-on-one with a young lady. How do you encourage ladies to get up and keep going, whether it's a little girl or a middle-aged woman or somebody who's diagnosed at 60? How do you encourage folks to still make the most out of their life? What are some of the words or sentences of advice that you offer?
One of the biggest things that I've learned is that it doesn't matter how much time you get, but rather what you do with the time you're given. And obviously not everyone's illness is life-shortening or, terminal or however you want to phrase it, but it still is something that really impacts the illness community as a whole. And most of us are put into situations where it is at least life-threatening. And realizing that even if you have that prognosis, even if you're terrified, you can still do so much right now that will make such lasting positive impact, and that your life is not over.
Time almost doesn't matter for stuff like this, right? Like, if you accomplish something or you change someone's life or you put something out like in writing or whatever, or a video or something positive, it lasts forever, right? And so your impact can be forever. And so why does it matter how long you live if you're doing things that really matter and that are going to make an impact?
Exactly. And something else I've learned, and I try to tell this to a lot of our girls, is that people can do pretty incredible things in some really crappy situations. Some of the best people I know who have accomplished the most have done it bedbound. You can make that impact no matter where you're at in your life. And I think that's something important to realize, is that you don't have to be going all the time. You can write a post from bed or do a video live stream from bed and answer people's questions and share funny videos with people who might be needing a laugh, and that will stay with people forever.
Yeah.
That's a good point. And I think to tie it in with many of our listeners, I'm going to make it a little more personal. We've talked about her, I think last year, Kyle and I have a good friend, or we were close with somebody named Holly LeBlanc, and she has since passed. She was living with Friedreich's ataxia, same disease Kyle and I have, and she also was fighting cancer. And some of the most powerful things that I received from her, whether they were silly little Snapchat videos that brightened my day, they were all done while she was in bed. But her attitude and her positivity and her influence, even in the midst of really ugly days, truly had they still have a lasting positive impact. It doesn't matter whether it's a 10-minute window you're given or a 10-decade window you're given. Your life can have so much meaning and so much power if you opt to initiate what the possibilities could be for you. So, Shira, tell us, where do people find you? Where do they find Sick Chicks? How do people around the globe get involved with what you're doing?
So you can head to www.thesickchicks.com. We kind of have our hub there. You can submit spotlight posts through there. We post most of our events on there as well. So if there's a local girl in your area hosting a Sick Chicks event, you can find her there. We have different programs for ambassadors. So if people want to, promote us on social media, we give them different promo codes and things like that. So that's the way you can get involved. or you can get it at another level, being a local leader, so hosting the events for other Sick Chick women, organizing lobby days, etc. And we also have an option for girls on college campuses with our campus crew, so starting a Sick Chicks club at your local college or university. You can find me on social media at Shira Strongin is every single one of my handles. I keep it simple and easy. And people oftentimes will find us a lot through doctors' offices, actually. It was really crazy. I had this experience 2 years ago at Rare Disease Week. I was there with a friend, and I was at the NIH at that time as a patient, and this girl won the Rare Artist Award there. And in her speech, she mentioned being an NIH patient, so I walked up to her after and was like, oh my gosh, like, you're at the NIH, I'm there right now, like, we should totally talk. And it turns out she knew me from Sick Chicks because even though she's from Canada, her social worker there had been telling her that she needed to get involved in Sick Chicks. So it's really incredible to see the kind of power behind that movement and things that I didn't even plan as far as promotion, but that people know about it and will share it.
And tell us one more time, when is the summit?
It is on August 4th at Saddleback College in Mission Viejo, Orange County, California. Tickets are on sale right now. You can find them at our website or on our social media pages, and it will be from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m.
Wonderful. So you still got plenty of time to check that out and, of course, to register, purchase tickets, and attend Sick Chicks' first summit. Well, Shira, thank you so much for an incredible conversation today. Thank you for giving us the liberty of your time and sharing with our listeners what you're doing. I'm excited for this episode, and I'm excited to continue to watch what you are doing and the impact that Sick Chicks is having.
I totally agree, and we will be watching for sure what's going on with Shira Strongin and with Sick Chicks in the future.
Thank you, and don't forget we're doing our Connect 4 tournament, Rare Disease Week 2019.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Can't forget.
We'll start working on the bracket.
We got a lot of commitments already for 2019. Now we gotta do a Connect 4 tournament. We're doing some film challenge with Nick on our couple episodes ago. 2019 is filling up pretty quickly.
We'll get it done. Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. Find us online at twodisableddudes.com. And please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts.
We'd like to hear from you. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins, who also composed the music.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.